This is the ultimate guide to modern industrialization. We are going to be zooming through the ages of this mod, and my goodness, this is a mod indeed. It is absolutely massive, extremely complex, and there is so much to learn. What you're going to be learning in this video is how to make steam, looking at making starter machines and steel, going on to coke ovens, blast furnaces, electric quarries. We're going to be looking at steam boilers, moving on to electricity, then going on to electric blast furnaces, oil rigs, making diesel, making boosted diesel and really complex different materials, stainless steel and distillery and boosted diesels, upgrading to massive diesel generators, and finally going on to nuclear power and fusion. But before we get to fusion, we have to start from the beginning. If you're not familiar with this mod, it is a bit like GregTech or IC2, etc., but it's definitely a lot simpler, a lot more straightforward, and it's taken all that tediousness out of it. First thing you're going to want to make is an MI, Modern Industrialization, guidebook. How do we make this? It's some copper nuggets and a book. And this is going to give you everything you need to know, but you don't need to worry about that, of course, because you have me. The first two things you're going to then want to mine up is a ton of iron, tin, and copper. We do then have here the steam age, like I have previously mentioned, and then we have the electric age. In the steam age, it's basically a gateway to the electric age, so you are going to be replacing all of your steam age machines eventually. Once we get to the steam electric age, you won't be replacing those items, and you can then feel free to make your final setups, so do be aware of that. The first thing you want to make is a forge hammer here. Make it out of iron ingots and some heavy weighted pressure plates. I'm not going to be going through all recipes. I'm going to make the assumption that you know how to use JEI. If you don't, just click and then press R over recipe to see how to make it. And then U is uses for items. And that's generally all you need to know. Get a usage tutorial. So a forge hammer, once you've got one, we can place it down like this. This is it in front of it. And then right click to go inside it. And then what you're going to do is in this left slot here, you're going to put the item you're going to use. And you are going to want to get Silk Touch for a lot of the ores here. There is going to be a way quite shortly I'm going to show you to easily get Silk Touch, so don't worry. Let's put in our iron ore. And you can see here, raw iron comes up. 1 iron ore makes 2 raw iron. If I click raw iron, I've then selected that recipe and I can take out 2 raw iron. If I do that, you can see it's now gone to 48 iron ore. I do it again, it goes down to 47. So I'm basically just clicking to take my output. There's also a slot here for a hammer. And this is for these hammers here. There's an iron one. There is a netherite one, a steel one, and a diamond one. The only difference between these is the durability on them. So let's have a look at how we make an iron hammer. If I press R on here, you can see it's some sticks and some iron large plates. To make iron large plates, we need 4 iron plates. And to make iron plates, you use the forge hammer. You can see here, 2 iron ingots makes 1 plate. So 2, 4, 6, 8 ingots will make 4 iron plates. And 4 iron plates makes 1 large one. You need 32 iron ingots to be able to make the iron hammer, which is quite a lot. However, once you make that iron hammer and we put it in here, what you're going to see is we're going to double up our output. 50% increase, not double. When I put in the iron hammer, I've unlocked another recipe. I can actually make 3 raw iron from 1 iron ore. Or I can make 4, so actually we are doubling it, dust. So I can actually now make 4 iron dust out of 1 iron ore. Iron dust can be simply smelted into an ingot. So although you've spent quite a lot of time getting 32 iron ore to make your hammer, you now are actually going to be getting 4 iron per ore. So you've quadrupled it from rather than getting 1, you're getting 4 each time. And you've doubled it if you weren't using a hammer. If I put in copper ingots into here, you can see we can make quite a lot of things. Copper bolts, curved plates, double ingots, dust, rods, rings, etc. And then double ingots, you can see I can make like double the amount of rings and plates and things like that. So you can always just put the item in and see the recipe. What I can also do is press U on the copper ingot here and then go to forge hammer at the top and you can see what items can be made with that item that you're putting in there. And that is pretty much how you use the Forge hammer. Now, I did say about getting Silk Touch really easily, and that is with a steam mining drill here. If we look at how to make that, you need some large iron plates again, which I've shown you, and a copper drill head. It looks quite complex with the copper drill head, needing plates, curved plates, bolts, and gears. Gears being made with bolts and rings, etc. But all of these items, when you just work it back, can all be made in the Forge hammer. Just keep working it back. You know, drill head, okay, a gear, okay, a ring. How do I make a ring? Forge hammer, nice, I can make it with a copper ingot. So once you've made your steam mining drill, you're going to see on top of it, it needs water, and it also needs some sort of combustible. The combustible is in that grey slot, and then the water percentage you can see as a bar. What I can do is just right-click over the water, and now the water is full. If I want to add coal into it, which is also something you'll need for the sort of burnable, I just take the steam mining drill and right-click it over the coal in my inventory, and now the coal is in there. So if I had coal in that slot, I pick up the mining drill, right-click the coal, and now it comes back out. Right-click the coal, and it goes back in. What I can also do by pressing Y for Yankee on my keyboard is enable and disable 3x3 mining. You see that black outline is going to change whenever I change it on there. You can also shift right-click to actually enable and disable Silk Touch, so you don't have to have it enabled. But that is a great way of getting Silk Touch and also 3x3 mining early game. You can also press shift on some of these items to see more about them. The next thing we need to do, being in the steam age, is actually make some steam. So to preface it, we're going to be using a boiler to boil up water and make steam. We're going to be using another machine to pump out the water for it. And then we're going to be using that steam to power some bronze machines. We're also going to be using item pipes, and we're going to be using fluid pipes, as you see here. Let's first look at the bronze boiler and actually making the steam itself. So, a bronze boiler, we're going to need some bronze plates and a bronze tank, etc. And we're also going to need some fire clay bricks. To make bronze, what you're going to want to do is make bronze dust. And that is going to be 3 copper dust and 1 tin dust. You can make dusts in the Forge hammer. So just make the bronze dust and then smelt them to make bronze ingots, put that in the Forge hammer, and you can eventually get your bronze boiler. You're also going to need fire clay bricks. This is 4 fire clay bricks. You need fire clay dust. Same thing again, it's brick dust and clay balls. Clay balls, so you just get from clay. And then brick dust, again, in the Forge hammer, you can put in bricks and get the brick. Fire clay bricks, smelt it up, get the brick, make your bronze boiler. We place down a boiler, like you can see in front here. What you're going to see is a temperature bar, water, steam, so input and output, and also the hard fuel you're going to be using, which is going to be coal. So if I put down my bronze boiler here, as you can see here, I've got another machine, which is a bronze water pump. Again, you just need some components that you can make in the Forge hammer, and you're going to place it down, and you want to put water horizontally to the 8 ones around it. Now, annoyingly, to actually make your bronze water pump work, you will also need steam, because it is a steam-powered machine, and all of these bronze machines do require steam. I'm going to put the water down. Oh, you can see it's not making any water because we need steam. So how can we get steam then? Obviously, you could just put a bucket of water into this bronze boiler. But one thing you can actually do is get your bucket of water and put it into your furnace, and you can actually smelt up a bucket of steam. And you'll actually get a steam bucket. You can then get that steam bucket and just right-click it, left-click it, I think it is. There you go, left-click it into my bronze water pump and put steam in there. And that's going to be the same for all bronze machines. You can manually left-click in, water or steam, whatever they need, like that. Once you've done that and you've got your pump, what you're then going to do is shift right-click and then shift right-click again with a fluid pipe. That's going to attach the fluid pipes. What we can then do is right-click on the fluid pipe, and it's going to have a priority. So it will try and input and output to the highest priority first. And you can say, do I want this side to input or output? You can see there's a little arrow on there showing input. But we want to output from here. We want to output the water. So I'm going to say extract only on this button over here. And that's going to automatically, it knows that we're trying to extract the water. And shift click to clear that network of its fluid and just say, no, I don't want any. So that's going to output water automatically. What we can then do is shift right click and shift right click again to attach a fluid pipe to our boiler. And then we can just shift right click at this point because there's nothing else in the way. Fluid pipes onto here. And then when they connect up like that. So we're now exporting water. It's going to go into our boiler. You can see here the little arrow. We want to go to insert. It inserts the water into our boiler. You can then put coal in here. And the temperature will rise and we will start making steam. Now what you can also make is a wrench, just made from bronze plates. What we could do with a wrench is I can right click these cables to connect or disconnect them. Shift right click to make it drop. Right click the fluid pipe back down. Right click here and right click here to join it back up. There you go. This is a fully working system I've made here. Got the bronze boiler, water coming in from the pump. And if you only had, by the way, like one water, so it would actually pump up a lot less. You want to surround it completely. And you can actually put these pipes in the water. And you can also put item pipes in it. Can you see there? I've got the item pipe and the fluid pipe. You can actually put these all in the same space. Just like you could used to on Ender.io, or can on Ender.io. So what we've got here is the pump exporting the water into the fluid pipe, which is going into the bronze boiler. I've got coal in here, and you could automate this by getting a chest, item pipe, saying extract on the item pipe, and you can see it defaults to whitelist mode enabled, which is a tad annoying. So if I put in my coal here, it is whitelisting the coal. However, if I take the coal out, can you see it says empty filter? If I put the coal into this chest, and it's automatically saying, yep, extract from the chest, input into it's got coal. Into here, you can see the coal isn't going anywhere, even though there's space for it. What you want to do is right click on the item pipe and click to blacklist mode, and it won't need a filter. Obviously, you could just click the coal into the whitelist. But if you don't want to whitelist it, you just change it to blacklist and it will just let anything through. Unless you obviously put things in that you want blacklisted. And now you can see it's filling up with coal. What you can then do is attach another fluid pipe and put it to out, and it will automatically take the steam out of our boiler. And I'm putting it through a bronze tank, and it's going back into our water pump. A bronze tank is just how you can store fluids, and steam is technically a fluid in this mod. And then we're just pumping it into all of our other bronze machines. And that is how you make steam. Now let's look at the machines that we can make out of our bronze. So we've got the bronze compressor, the mixer, the macerator, the cutting machine, and the furnace. The furnace doesn't make any more ores or anything. It's just double the speed of a normal furnace. And one steam boiler running at full temperature here can provide 4 machines with enough steam. However, I have got 5 here because I'm not going to be using all of 5 of these at once, and therefore there'll be more than enough steam. But running at full capacity, one steam boiler can run 4 machines at once. So first up, we have the compressor. Again, all of the items that you're going to be using here is going to be either like a forge hammer or items that you can make in the forge hammer. These machines will be really good at increasing your efficiency, by the way. The forge hammer is not as efficient. Using these bronze machines are going to be a lot better. So you can see in here, in the compressor, 1 bronze ingot makes 1 bronze plate. Whereas in the forge hammer, you need 2 bronze ingots to make a bronze plate. So it's half how much bronze you need. And that is going to basically compress things and automate it. Then you have the mixer. The mixer is going to mix things. This is really good for your ores as well. You can see in here, 3 copper dust and 1 tin makes 4 bronze dust. Whereas if you just do it in your crafting grid, you only get 3. So it's adding like a third more efficiency. There's loads of other things like TNT, paper, using wood pulp, which I'm not sure how to get yet. I will by the time I finish this video. Dirt into mud. There's loads of different things you can make here in the mixer. So do have a look. It's a really, really useful machine. We then have the bronze macerator. The macerator macerates things. So a really good example is things like dandelions and sunflowers. It's going to be quite efficient at doing so as well, like glowstone back into 4 glowstone dust. You can also use it to make things like cobblestone into gravel, 1 bone into 6 bone meal, blaze dust would be good, and things like that. And you can also macerate down, like if you've made too many bolts, using titanium as an example, obviously not using that yet, but you can make a titanium blade into 5 titanium tiny dust. Tiny dusts, you can put 9 of them into 1 dust, which you can then smelt up into an ingot, of course. So that's the macerator. We've got the cutting machine. Now this is an interesting one. The cutting machine, you are going to need to be going on to the next phase, which is coal coke and things like that. So to use the cutting machine, as you can see here, it needs steam. It also needs lubricant. So I'm just going to show you it quickly, what the cutting machine can do. Well, it's going to cut things, basically. It's going to do so very efficiently. Like an iron ingot will make 2 iron rods. Whereas in the forge hammer, 1 iron ingot makes 1 iron rod. So again, it's doubled. However, you do need to pump into it lubricant. Lubricant is made at the start of the game. It's going to be creosote, okay? With some redstone dust and creosote in a mixer, you will get lubricant, which you can then use in your cutting machine. And you just use fluid pipes. How do we get creosote? Well, that is going to be made in the next step, which is the coke oven. I just wanted to show you these bronze machines first. So just do be aware, you are going to have to do the next step before being able to use the cutting machine. And then we've got the furnace, which I've already spoken about. And that is all of your bronze machines. Do keep these machines, because later on, down at this point, we're going to be upgrading them to steel. And you can directly upgrade these machines into their steel counterparts. And there you go. We've now made steam and looked at how to make all of the bronze machines. So then let's actually have a look at the coke oven. So to make the coke oven, you're going to need a few things. We're going to need some input and output hatches. We're going to need a coke oven and some bricks, just plain old bricks. So bricks, I'm sure you know how to make. You need 1 coke oven brick. And then you're going to need some input and output hatches. These are actually bronze hatches that you need to make. And there's 4 of them. And these are the fluid input hatch, the fluid output hatch, item input hatch, and the item output hatch. Quite simple what they do. You input fluids in the input hatch, you output fluids in the output, items in, items out. And you're going to need these, all 4 of them, in your coke oven. So what we're going to do with the coke oven is it's a 3x3. Interior is empty. So I'm just going to put my bricks down. Here, 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 here. That's because I'm putting my hatches on the corners. I'm going to put a coke oven brick here, which is basically the controller. If you're not sure where the item should go, use your wrench, and when you look at it, can you see it's showing you which items are missing here? It's showing me that there's nothing in the middle. Yeah? I do need to put bricks around. So, okay. I then hold over my fluid output hatch, showing me where I can put those. I can't put it on the middle row, as you can see, but I can put it on the top or bottom row. I'm going to put my fluid output hatch here. I'm going to put my item, input hatch here. I'm going to put my item output hatch here. And I meant to put fluid input. Fluid input here. Item input. Fluid output there. Item output there. And I'm going to fill this up with bricks on the outside, and then add a 3rd row. Now, if you do click on the controller here, you can see it says shape invalid. It does tell you when it's wrong. Once you've completed it, those inputs and output hatches will turn into the same color as the coke oven. And there you go, you've made a coke oven. Here's what I made earlier. I'm using a creative steam tank because I'm lazy. I'm going to pump in to the fluid input hatch, steam, and into the item input hatch, it's going to be, or it should be, coal. As you can see, the coal is going in there. You can manually put this in, of course. You don't have to do it like I am. You could just bucket it in there. I wouldn't recommend bucketing it in. This mod is all about automation, and you will be needing a lot of coal coke. I can then right-click on it, and you can see it says shape valid, status active. And on the item output, I now have a stack of coke. Take it out. You can now see that it's working because it's gone orange, so it's on. And you can see the percentage of progress in here. The recipe base is 2 EU per tick. Well, that's energy units per tick. With this steam boiler, this can make 2 EU per tick, so you're fine. And in the fluid output, you can see I'm getting creosote. And that creosote, remember, is what you're going to be using to make, you're going to be using it in the mixer. If I just get a bucket of creosote to show you, I could put it in the liquid slot of the mixer. And then I think it's redstone. I just put it in here. And you can see I'm now making lubricant. And there we go, we've got some lubricant. And there's the mixer going. It's pretty cool. And obviously we're going to use that lubricant. You can fluid pipe it out into your cutting machine. And there you go, you have made a coke oven. Now that you've got your coke oven, we are now going to go one step further and look at how to make steel. Quite similar, but different. We're going to be making a steam blast furnace. Rather than bricks, you need a load of fire clay bricks. These are the same ones we made earlier. So fire clay dust that you can make, well, in a mixer now actually. 2 and 2 makes 4, rather than 2 and 2 making 3 in your crafting table. We're also going to need a steam blast furnace, which is just a blast furnace with more fire clay bricks. So in a similar way that you made your coke oven. And then again, inputs and outputs. So the only difference here is it's 1, 2, 3, 4 high, and you don't put a ceiling on it. So it's only the bottom one. Like if I show you, so for the middle, you have this middle one here. That's it. And 1, 2, 3. You're going to be putting in items. So you need an item input hatch, a fluid input hatch, again for steam, and then a fluid input hatch. Fluid out of this? Steam blast furnace. What fluids can we get? Oh yes, you can actually do lots of different things in here. So for making steel, we're not going to have any fluid being made. But I would recommend using a fluid output hatch. Using a fluid output hatch, just in case you want to make another recipe at a later date using this, because you can put redstone in here to get molten redstone, raw synthetic oil to get synthetic oil, soldering alloy as well. But for right now, you don't have to make a second output hatch for fluid, only item, because you're making steel ingots. So basically, really simply in this one, you just pump in steam, and in the item slot, you're pumping in uncooked steel dust. This can be made in the crafting table with iron dust and coke dust. Coke dust is made by using your macerator with the coke that you have made in here. So if I take the coke out from our coke oven, I'm then going to run along to my macerator. I put the coke in here. You then get coke dust. With the coke dust, I then make uncooked steel dust with iron dust. Iron dust, again, you can use the macerator. 1 ingot makes 1 dust. In the forge hammer, of course, probably where you're going to be getting your iron dust, you can get from iron ore, you can get 4 iron dust. That will make you uncooked steel dust. And you just put this into your steam blast furnace into the item input, and after 30 seconds, it will make a steel ingot. So it does take quite a long time. One thing you can do on here is use gunpowder. If I right click in here, you can see it says status active, full of steel ingots. You see now it's going 14, 15, 16, 17. What you can actually do is right click gunpowder on it, and can you see it says overclock 4 minutes, and now it's going at twice the speed. You can use gunpowder on your machines like I just have, and it will actually overclock them for a certain amount of time and double their speed. There you go. We now know how to make steel. If this is overwhelming or anything, just look down below in this video. It is all chaptered for your convenience, by the way. And I do actually make all of these mod tutorials by request. So Sometimes I find ones to do myself, but a lot of the ones I do are actually by community requests. So if you just comment down below mods that you want tutorials for, it actually makes my life easier, and then obviously it makes your life easier because you get the guides. Now that we've got our steel ingots, what the hell are we going to do with them? Well, the first thing you're going to want to do is upgrade your bronze machines. We have here steel upgrade. They are pretty simple-ish to make. Need some fire clay bricks, some fluid pipes, bronze items that you can make in the various machines we've already seen, and a steel machine casing. And this is just with steel plates and steel gears. And again, like steel rings, etc. You're basically just going back. Once you've got your steel ingots, you can just put them in like the compressor or the forge hammer, etc., and make the exact same items that we're making before, just now with steel. You don't have to do anything different or fancy. This recipe will give you 2 steel upgrades, and there is 2 ways to upgrade them. If I take my 2 steel upgrades, the first way you can upgrade them is literally by going over to your machine and right-clicking it, or sorry, shift right-clicking it. You now see that I have upgraded my bronze furnace to a steel furnace. And you see here on the bronze cutting machine, it says at the top, steam 2 buckets. If I shift right-click, it's now 4 buckets of steam. So it's going to work at twice the speed, but also use twice as much steam. Don't worry, of course, because you can upgrade your steam boiler to a steel boiler, which could take up twice the amount of water and make twice the amount of steam. Same thing with your water pump. You can upgrade it to a steel version. So you get the hint. I could do the same with my bronze... No, I can't do the same with my bronze tank. You can make bronze tanks, but you can't use the upgrade. So I can upgrade all these machines to steel counterparts, and they are twice to add fast. Another way you can do it is by going into a crafting table, putting, say, your bronze compressor in, putting in a steel upgrade, and you can then get the steel compressor. And that's the second way that you can upgrade your machines. There we go. We've now upgraded our machines to steel. There's also a few new machines that you can make when you get to steel, and that is going to be the steel packer and unpacker. So it looks like this. You basically are packing these items into one. We look at what we can use with it. Things like making 9 nuggets into an ingot, 4 plates into a large plate, which, no, it was always the same, isn't it? So I don't think you get much or any efficiency out of this. It's just more automation. The unpacker obviously does the opposite, and that does take steam to work. The last one is the automatic trash can, and you can pump any items or fluids into here, and it will void them, of course. Last but not least, with steam, steam and steel, is going to be the quarry. This here is the steel quarry. We're going to need a few items to make this, and this is basically it's your quarry, just like, in the olden days. We're going to need a steam quarry itself, which is the controller here. We're going to need a load of steel machine casings. We're going to need some steel pipe machine casings. And we're also going to need some chains, which are just the basic vanilla Minecraft chains. And again, you will need some steel item input hatches. You need a steel fluid input, a steel item input, and a steel item output. So fluid and items in, just items out. One thing I have forgot to mention regarding the input and output. If I actually use, I think you can use the upgrade ones, on my hatches here, it will upgrade the whole machine to a steel version. So let's say I want to upgrade my blast furnace. Steel fluid input. I put that on there. Yes, you don't seem to be able to use the steel upgrades on them. If you make a steel version of the hatch, only one of them, it will actually upgrade the entire machine. You can see it's going even faster now. You can see it's using 4 EU per tick. So the base recipe is 2. It can now use 4. And the steel boilers can do up to 4. Bronze is 2, steel is 4. That's a way you can also upgrade then your steam blast furnace and your... Back to the quarry. So you're going to put your quarry at the front here. What you're then going to do is go all the way around 1, 2, 3, and go up 1 with machine casings. So literally just like that. Then on the middle, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 with your steel pipe machine casings. you're then going to get your chain and go all the way from the ground and have it coming up to here. And then on top, you just get another machine casing like that. And then you need your inputs and outputs for your fluid. I've got my fluid input, and I'm going to use my item input. In fact, I'm just going to show you the one earlier at this point. We've made the quarry. What you actually need to input into the item hatch is bronze drills. You make these with item pipes, iron gears, and bronze drill heads. But it does take a little bit of work to get them. As you can see, you need quite a few items to make these bronze drill heads. But if you make a stack of them, for example, what you're then going to do, pump them into the item input hatch, pump in steam into the input fluid hatch, and then in the output hatch, you're actually going to be getting ores. And this is a super flat world, so you don't need the ores underneath you or anything. It does technically mine them out of nowhere, which is fantastic, which means you never have to move your quarry, which I love. I hate moving these things and these mods. And as you can see, I've gotten quite... This is with a stack. Or is that only with one? Still running? Yeah, okay, so it looks like it's only used one bronze drill. And then in here, it doesn't tell me the durability of my drill. I believe I only put one stack in here for this tutorial. I've already gotten that much. So the bronze drills do last a really long time. So it does take you a while to make them. I would just say make one or two. And then you're going to have tons of ore already, just with those few drills. And there you go. So this is the complete steam age, guys. You've started off with your forge hammer. You've looked at boiling up steam and using it in bronze machines. You've then looked at making a coke oven to make creosote and also coke that we can use with our steam blast furnace to make steel out of uncooked steel dust. Steam. Yep. And then we've looked at actually using that steel to make a quarry and also a few extra machines and also upgrading our machines. That now concludes the steam age. What we're going to happen next is that we're actually going to move on to the electric age, and we're going to slowly transition away from steam and into electricity. Well, not slowly, but quite quickly. First thing we're going to make in this instance is going to be the large steam boiler. And that basically looks like this. So what you're actually going to need is going to be the large steam boiler. We're going to need some bronze plated bricks, and we're going to need some heat-proof machine cases. It uses fuels 8 times faster than the furnace does, but it produces 256 millibuckets of steam when fully heated. Unlike its single block counterpart, 80% of any unconsumed heat will be lost. So basically, you want it running at maximum output, otherwise you will lose the steam and heat that you. So the steam boiler itself, I think, has to go on the second level. And then at the bottom, we're putting heat-proof machine casing. So again, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 proof machine casings. Large steam boiler on. And then you can see what we need. So it's basically the outer casings all around the outside. 1, 2, 3 rows. And on the inside, you just have 2 of these, which are our bronze pipe machine. So I'm going to put 1 and 2 in there, and then just surround it with bronze plated, and that is going to go 1, 2, 3, like that. I'm going to need an input hatch. I would advise a steel input hatch. You can see you could put this on the bottom row only. In here is where you're going to put your coal. Now heating up quite quickly, the temperature flying up here. And then you're also going to want a steel fluid output hatch. You are also going to want a steel fluid input hatch to input your water, just like you would with the smaller counterpart. So a fluid output for the steam, a fluid input for the water, and an item input for your coal or fuel that you will be burning. And that is the large steam boiler. There's also a large tank that you can make here. And this is really good for storing massive amounts of, let's say, steam, for example, that you've just made in your large steam boiler. For this, you're going to need a large tank. You're going to need steel machine casings, and you're going to need some glass. So if I place, let's say I place a steel machine casing and a large tank on top of it, as you can see here, this is the shape that you can use. Now, if I actually right-click on the large tank, there's a button here that says Select Multi-Block Size. I can say I want the width to be 5 and the height to be 4. Now when I look with my wrench, you can see it's showing me what items are needed to make it into this shape. Let's just do the smallest version for this. You can see it can hold 1.7 kilobuckets. So is that 1.7 thousand buckets? 1,500 buckets? But it's a lot of steam. And you can see here you just need basically lots of steel machine casings. It's going to be glass here, 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 and one up top as well. So I'm going to, sort of like this. See that? That's how you're going to do it. And this should be, yes, that's. I'm going to go filling in around it with the steel case like this. And there we go. You'll know it's worked because it shows you how much you can store in there. If I break this, working. Thought that there was nothing. Maybe it will. And just like with the other machines, you can actually add a large tank hatch onto this one. It's specifically got its own name. It's the large tank hatch. And that's how you can pump in things like steam or whatever other fluids you would like. Before we start making actual electricity and going into the electric age fully, we need to make wires to be able to connect our machines. And for that, we will want a wire mill. You can start off by making a steel wire mill. And again, this will require steam to work. So, wire mill, steel wire mill. It's just some steel machine casing and some bronze gears. Very easy to make. In here, what you can do, if you look at show recipes, is it can turn plates into annealed copper wire, aluminum wire, copper fine wire, and that is actually it. It's just going to make fine wire and just wires. If we look at the copper wire here, for example, you can see in a crafting table that we can make copper cables with rubber sheets and copper wires. So rubber is the other thing you're going to need to make your cables to transport your electricity. So we've already covered how to make the wires. You can make a few other things that you're going to need. Capacitors, motors, analog circuits, and inductors and things like that. These often are going to need rubber sheets as well, and the wires that you've just made in your wire mill. So now let's have a look at rubber sheets. So rubber sheets will be made with synthetic oil. This is in a mixer. Remember, you've already made a bronze or steel mixer. Synthetic oil is made in the mixer. Sorry, rubber sheets are made in the mixer with synthetic oil and paper. Synthetic oil is made in your electric blast furnace, which is this machine over here, which you don't have yet. So don't worry. You can also make it in the steam blast furnace. So raw synthetic oil into synthetic oil. You're basically cooking it up in the steam blast furnace. How do we make raw synthetic oil? Well, you can actually mix water and coke dust in the mixer. Coke dust is gotten by macerating your coke that you make in your blast furnace into dust. So let's go the other way and look at start to finish. Step 1, make your coke in the blast furnace. You've probably already done this, or in your coke oven, sorry. So make your coke and then macerate it in a macerator into coke dust. Then step 2, go to your mixer with the coke dust and add in water. That will mix into raw synthetic oil. Step 3, go into your steam blast furnace and put the raw synthetic oil in to make synthetic oil. Step 4, put paper and synthetic oil into a mixer to make rubber sheets. I would highly advise that you do automate these kinds of things because you are going to be making a lot of them. One thing about cables as well, once you've made them, is if you press shift on them, you can see copper cables. Max transfer is 256 EU, that is low voltage. Same with silver, tin, and then copper nickel is 1024, that is medium voltage. Electrum is medium voltage, aluminum is high voltage at 8,000 EU, and then EV is 65,000, and then there's SV, which is superconductor, which is 1 giga EU. So you can press shift to see which different cables you are using there. Some machines are going to use low voltage, some are going to use medium voltage. All of the ones I'm going to show you in the next sort of few chapters is going to be low voltage. You can make these transformers here. This is a low voltage to medium voltage transformer, and that will have 5 inputs for the low voltage and 1 medium voltage output. However, a medium voltage to low voltage will have 1 input for the medium voltage, but 5 low voltage outputs. Just read through this a few times if you're not sure. We're not going to be using transformers just yet, though. Now it is time to start making electricity. If this is getting overwhelming at this point, because it is starting to get quite complex, just watch this chapter again. It's all chaptered in the video and timestamped. Next up, we are finally going to make electricity, and I'm going to give you 2 options for making electricity. There's the low voltage steam turbine, and there's the low voltage diesel generator. So the low voltage steam turbine is probably the easiest way to make electricity. If we look inside it, you can see we've got 3200 EU in here, and we've got the steam. So basically for this one, you pump in steam and it turns a turbine, which then makes electricity. You can then add a copper cable at the back, and this is going to output the electricity to wherever you need it to, low voltage. So here are some machines here, and we're powering these with our copper cables. Also can make the low voltage diesel generator. You don't have to use diesel at this point. We are going to look at making diesel. I'm going to show you an automated process for it. Can use creosote at this point. Don't forget that creosote will be made in your coke oven as a byproduct when smelting coal, and you can use that straight away in the LV diesel generator. And these are the 2 ways that I would advise you to make electricity to start with. And now you are officially in the electronic age. The only kind of new things that you're going to need to make these machines is going to be the copper wire in the wire mill and some magnetic steel rods, which is just a steel rod and some redstone, and some tin cables as well, using that rubber and tin wire. So you must make the wire mill and your cables first before making your LV steam turbines, etc., because you will need the rubber. There's 2 other little machines I want to show you. One is the polarizer. As you can see in the polarizer, it has a magnet sign. If we look at recipes, what you can do is polarize things. Copper nickel wire into magnetic copper nickel wire, magnetic stainless steel rods with neodymium dust, which you don't know how to get yet, and also steel rods into magnetic steel rods. So make a polarizer, and then you can just polarize your steel rods into magnetic versions. If you want to make it manually, you can. However, it's going to be 6 redstone. Versus using it in the polarizer, you just use some electricity. That's already making that a lot easier. Other one is the assembler. This is a really awesome machine. It does say in the guidebook, we strongly suggest you automate machine hulls, analog circuits, motors, pistons, robot arms, and conveyor belts. So basically make a ton of assemblers. If we look in the assembler, you can see here we have empty slots. If we press show recipes, on the left-hand side is where you put your items, and then on the right-hand side you have the recipe you're making. You can also use fluids in here. For example, the bronze-plated bricks that we needed for our large steam boiler over here, we can just put in 8 bronze plate and fire clay bricks, and it will start making it. In fact, let's do that now. I could just click in the bronze plates here. Make sure that your cable is connected. Yep, I've got electricity. And then also the fired bricks. So if I just put in fire clay bricks, you can see here, there is the recipe, and it's automatically making the bronze plated bricks for me. What you can then do is click lock editing. So click that lock and then click the recipe. And then that has locked that recipe to here. So you can have up to 3 recipes in each assembler. And you could just, let's say one recipe took 3 items, the other took 3, and the other took 3. You could have all 3 recipes going through here completely locked in. And that's just going to really help automate some of those basic and tedious materials that you are and components that you're currently making. The next thing you're going to want to make after that is going to be the electric blast furnace. This is literally the electric version. You're going to need the electric blast furnace, of course, heat-proof machine casings, some copper nickel coils. And that's actually it, to be honest. So If we put the blast furnace block on the bottom and then look at what we're going to need, you can see it is mostly going to be these heat-proof machine casing. It's another 3x3, basically just an electric version of the one you've already got. Then it's going to be a hollow 1-2 copper nickel coils. Oh, and when I say it's an electric version, it does also unlock some more recipes. This is hollow inside, and then just top it off like that. The valid. You can also upgrade it to Kanthal as well. That can do even more. You are going to want an LV energy input hatch where you're going to put your your energy in from. Here, using a creative storage unit for my electricity, but obviously you would be using one of these two machines. You see it's filling up with electricity. And if we look at the recipes we can make in here, in the electric blast furnace, one of the main things we can do is turn a block of bauxite or bauxite dust into aluminum. Bauxite, if you just go to dust, which is macerated from crushed dust, which is literally just getting it from the main ore, and if you press shift on it, you can see what Y levels it spawns at. Aluminum is the main thing you're going to make in the electric blast furnace. So this one here, I'm going to put in my bauxite blocks. You can see in here it's going, and then you'd have an item output hatch where you're going to get your aluminum. And that is one of the main items that you unlock with the electric blast furnace. Once you've done that, you can then start looking at some really interesting low voltage machines that are going to really help your factory grow. The first of these new machines that you can now make are, one, the centrifuge. You'll notice on the centrifuge you need large motors and large pumps, needing aluminum rotors and electronic circuits, which need aluminum plates and things like that. Everything else you should be able to make. The only one you might not quite be aware of yet is battery alloy, which is made by smelting battery alloy dust, which is made in a mix-up with just lead and antimony. Antimony, again, is another ore get, and that is at minus 64 to 64. Again, it's just another ore that those are the only kind of ingredients you're going to need that you may not have used yet. Of course, the aluminum is made in the electric blast furnace. So what does the centrifuge do? Well, you can see you've got some input slots here. Look at the recipes. One thing it's really good for is you can use leaves and saplings, etc., to make plant oil. Plant oil with redstone will then make your lubricant. It is really useful. Make gravel into flint. And one other thing you can do that's really good is you can get coal dust and turn it into carbon dust. Carbon dust is used for quite a few things. One of them is going to be silicon. So in the EBF, the electric blast furnace, one of the things you can make in there is with quartz dust and carbon dust, you can make silicon dust. You can also use that carbon dust with your iron dust to make steel ingots. So using the centrifuge is an easier way of getting steel. You use the centrifuge into an electronic blast furnace and you can get steel much, much easier in the electronic age. Again, using carbon dust and iron dust, for example. And don't forget quartz dust and carbon dust will make your silicon. That is the main use case I would show you for centrifuge. It's going to be your plant oil at this point, and then, as I showed you, so your coal dust into carbon. Coal dust is literally like one. Coal dust is made. You can make it in the forge hammer by just hitting coal, or you can make it in the macerator as well. One thing to note at this point is your machines do actually have electronic versions, like the compressor. You can make yourself here. You should be able to make it with everything you've got at this point. The electric compressor, the electric cutting machine, furnace, macerator, mixer, all of these do now have electronic counterparts which you can make. That's the centrifuge. We've also got the chemical reactor. Again, using some aluminum, etc. The chemical reactor is quite interesting. It has quite a few recipes. One of the really interesting things you can do with the chemical reactor is making heavy fuel and light fuel. We're going to need to do this when we make diesel, and there's going to be a chapter shortly after this one completely showing you the process of making diesel. But just know that the chemical reactor has quite a few different things, and you are going to need it shortly. We then have the distillery. This is really good for things like heavy fuel and light fuel as well, and machines that automatically put a certain item in and you want to make a different recipe. I'm going to show you how to do that, and that you might not have come across that issue yet, but I'm going to resolve it for you before it becomes an issue maybe. Then we also have the electrolyzer. This can split different materials into different parts and you can electrolyze them. So if you look at recipes here, at this point I'm not sure. Oh, the electrolyzer, you can turn water into hydrogen and oxygen, which again we're going to need in diesel. So diesel is one of the first really cool fuels we're going to make, and here's the setup for it. We're also going to look at oil as well, oil drilling. So these are some more basic electric machines. And again, don't forget, and actually upgrade all the way down here your basic steel machines. Well, you can't upgrade them, but you do actually need to make your own proper electric versions now. But you're never going to need to make new ones. Once you get to electric, you're done. To continue on getting more and more advanced in modern industrialization, we now need to look at oil. This here is the oil drill. It's basically a quarry, but... So, what are we going to need? Well, we're going to need an oil drilling rig, and we're going to need a lot of steel machine casing. You're also going to need a steel item input hatch. We need an energy input hatch, inputting the drill heads, just like in the quarry, and we are also going to need energy into it to power it, and we're going to need some steel pipe machine casings. So I'm going to actually put it in the air, show you it. If I just put it up here, in fact, it will make sense why I'm doing this. If I hold over, can you see how low it actually goes? It really, really does. So by this point, I'm assuming you know how to make these multi-blocks. You place the items as you go. Basically, you've got chains coming all the way up, casings here. You've got the steel pipe machine casing in the middle, and then you have the basically looks like the chains down. You can see the chains do. Gosh, when he fell. The chains do go quite low, as does the machine casing here. The wrench does show. Again, make sure you have your energy input hatch and your item input hatch. If you go into the oil drilling rig once you've built it and just press show recipe and see which drill heads will give you what resources. If you put in a copper drill, you're actually going to get water out, not just oil. If you put in stainless steel, which we aren't yet making, you'll get shale oil. And if you make aluminum drills, you'll make crude oil. And crude oil is what we're pretty much getting at. So you want to make some aluminum drills, put them in the item input hatch, and then power it. And of course, you will want a fluid output. So I'm going to put my fluid output hatch here. Oh, and no wonder it's not working. I already had one at the back. It's not working. I already made one. There we go. So my fluid output hatch, tracked, and there we go. The crude oil is pumping out of the fluid output hatch. After we've actually got on our crude oil, we then want to process it. And what we're going to be making here is diesel. What you're going to be wanting to make next is a medium voltage diesel generator. We can burn various fuels in here. It can produce up to 256 EU per tick and consumes any fluid fuel. If we look at the MV diesel generator here, you can see if you press U on it, that we can use biodiesel, giving you 250 EU per millibucket. Crude oil will give you 16. So you can, if you want, just go straight up now with the crude oil that you've drilled out and put it into your MV diesel generator. But obviously, you're going to get hardly any EU from that. Creosote gives you 160, so you could do that, but probably not making it fast enough to the amount we'd need it for. If we use diesel, however, we get 400, which isn't really bad when you look at these other ones that we have access to. There is boosted diesel, which needs biodiesel and diethyl ether. Obviously, that's a bit more complex than we're at right now. And therefore, diesel making 400 EU per millibucket is probably going to be our best bet. How do we make diesel? Well, you've already got all the tools you need. You just need to copy this setup here, basically. So to start off, we have our crude oil. You want to pump your crude oil with a fluid pipe into 2 distilleries. Distillery on the left here is making crude oil into sulfuric heavy acid. The distillery on the right is making it into sulfuric light acid. Now, the interesting thing here is, if I get a distillery, and I just patch it here, what you're going to see is I've hooked up the oil, the crude oil and power to the distillery, and it's making sulfuric light fuel. We also need to make sulfuric heavy fuel. So what you're going to do here, I'm just going to break this off, is you're going to click lock editing, right? If I put into here, heavy, sulfuric heavy fuel, click it, and can you see it's lit up green? Click it and drag it to the output, and then lock it. Oops. Lock that, click the lock, click that, and then drag it from JEI into here. Then when you get your crude oil, this is what I was saying earlier about making the solution for you before I realized it's an issue. See? Now you're making sulfuric heavy fuel. So if you want to this is probably going to be an issue in quite a few machines going forward. So if you do have this option, just don't forget you can do that. So step 1, crude oil going into 2 distilleries, sulfuric heavy fuel and sulfuric light fuel. Have these distilleries going into 2 chemical reactors. Now, I know there's a lot going on in here. What's happening in the 2 chemical reactors? I'm pumping in the sulfuric light fuel and hydrogen to make light fuel. In the heavy one, I'm using sulfuric heavy fuel and hydrogen to make heavy fuel. The sulfuric acid is a byproduct that we don't care about. So how do we make hydrogen? I'm going to go over this again, so don't worry if this is getting confusing. Well, we make it in the electrolyzer. So make a pump. I'm using the electric version to pump out the water. Don't also forget that you can use energy and fluid and item pipes all in the same space. Pump out your water into an electrolyzer. That will make the water into hydrogen and oxygen. I'm pulling out the hydrogen from the electrolyzer, and it's going into both chemical reactors with the sulfuric heavy fuel and the sulfuric light fuel. That will make light fuel and heavy fuel. Then output from the chemical reactors into an electric mixer, where you're literally mixing the heavy fuel and the light fuel into diesel. And there you go, you've made diesel. Let's just go over that one more time. You get your crude oil, which you're obviously drilling out. You're going to put it into 2 distilleries. 1, crude oil into sulfuric heavy fuel. 1, crude oil into sulfuric light fuel. Pull both of those into 2 separate chemical reactors, one for light and one for heavy. You need to put the sulfuric light fuel in, hydrogen, making light fuel. You need to put the sulfuric heavy fuel in with hydrogen, making heavy fuel. Pull both of these out into a mixer, mix them together into diesel. Hydrogen is from an electrolyzer, which is literally just by electrolyzing water. Pump water in, and it will make hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen can just sit there, right? And then hydrogen, obviously, you pull out into. Once you've got your diesel, pump it into a medium voltage generator here. Fluid pipe, output, tract only, diesel into my MV diesel generator, and there we go. We are making electricity at a medium voltage diesel. This actually pretty much concludes the electric age of the guide, and we're going to be moving on to the mid-game and then the end game next. There is a diesel jetpack and some tools you can make. Diesel jetpack is made of some. There's also a diesel chainsaw and a diesel mining drill, which is like the old mining drill that you're using, but this one has silk touch and fortune free. So pretty simple items there that I just wanted to make you aware of. But there we go, guys. We have now completed the electric age. Welcome to the mid-game of Modern Industrialization. This, everyone, is how to make stainless steel. And if you don't know me, or if you do know me, I just want to say, I think I've really upped my game in my Minecraft tutorials, because this is another level. I've really challenged myself with this one. very happy. So, this is how you make stainless steel. A few prefaces to this. I do expect that you have made diesel at this point. If you're watching this as part of my ultimate guide, obviously I've just shown you how to make diesel. That's the only one thing that is not going to be shown in this guide, is making diesel, and part of it is making sulfuric acid, and that is something you need. This here is how you make stainless steel. The TLDR of it is that we want to get 4 things into an electric: iron dust, manganese dust, nickel dust, and chromium dust. We want to mix it all together into, lock that so that we can't make anything, stainless steel dust. You then put the stainless steel dust into an electric blast furnace, and then you pump out the hot ingots into a vacuum freezer. This is all just, this is frost-proof machine casings, but it's just made from aluminum. It's really simple to make. By this point, you should already know how to be making multi-blocks, so I'm assuming that you can follow simply. So, what I like to do in my tutorials, if you are new or not here, or whether you're watching in the Ultimate Guide, is when things start getting complex, I start adding wool parving. So what we have here is 3 different, to get to this output here of making stainless steel. This grey one here is manganese dust and iron dust. And oh, by the way, I've made a very sexy flowchart, which will be coming soon, to help you visualize all of this. Really quite complex. So this grey route is iron dust and manganese dust. The pink one is your chromium, and this green one is hydrochloric acid. So let's have a look at how we're going to make iron dust. Very simply, in a centrifuge, I will go over this multiple times, in a centrifuge, put raw iron. Raw iron in a centrifuge is going to make iron dust and manganese crushed dust. Output the iron dust straight into your mixer, and that is 1 out of 4 components done. Step 2, the manganese dust. Obviously, I've just shown you, you will get manganese crushed dust. Export this from your centrifuge into a chemical reactor. The manganese crushed dust will need to go in with sulfuric acid, and that will make manganese sulfuric solution. How do you get sulfuric acid? Well, I'm using it from a creative tank. As I mentioned before, you can get it by making heavy fuels and light fuel, make diesel. I've got a separate tutorial on my channel on how to make diesel. You can watch that in the playlist for Modern Industrialization if you want. Pretty simply, you're going to get your crude oil, which you're going to be obviously mining up. Put that crude oil into a distillery to get sulfuric light or heavy fuel. And then from there, put it into a chemical reactor with water, hydrogen, and that will make you sulfuric acid. I've got a whole tutorial on that on my channel. Once you have your sulfuric acid and your manganese crushed dust, put them in that chemical reactor, and that will make manganese sulfuric solution. Output the manganese sulfuric solution into an electrolyzer. You will need to output your sulfuric acid somewhere. As you can see, I'm binning it. It will get clogged up in these machines. But in the electrolyzer, put the manganese sulfuric solution, and that will get you manganese tiny dusts. You can then use the manganese tiny dusts in a crafting table to put 9 of them together to make the dust, but it will be very tedious. You should be automating these production lines. So what I do is I output them from an iron pipe into an electric packer, packs 9 at a time into manganese dust, and that goes into the electric mixer, and that is iron dust and manganese dust done. Let's just go over that one more time. Centrifuge, raw iron into iron dust and manganese crushed dust. Iron dust goes straight into the mixer at the end. The manganese crushed dust goes into a chemical reactor with sulfuric acid. That makes manganese sulfuric solution. Output that into an electrolyzer, and it will then make it into manganese tiny dust, with sulfuric acid coming out as a byproduct. Need some to start off, so you can kind of filter this back through back here. Up to you. I think you lose about 10% overall. Manganese tiny dust gets packed into 9 into manganese dust. Nickel dust you can just mine up out the ground. Very, very simple on that one. And then the last one, which is chromium dust. This is the pink line here. To get chromium dust, we have to go down this way. So the way I've done it is, there's a few ways to do it, and I've tested a lot, and I think this is the easy way. Get a centrifuge, and centrifuge up redstone dust. Out of that, you will get some iron dust. So you could also use your iron dust in this way if you want. You'll also get ruby dust. So centrifuge the redstone into ruby dust. That into another centrifuge, so the ruby dust into a centrifuge, and you'll get chromium crushed dust. You'll also get aluminum dust. So this is actually a great way of getting aluminum as well, the byproduct. So then we get our chromium crushed dust, and you output that into a chemical reactor. Chromium crushed dust with hydrochloric acid. And that will make you chromium hydrochloric solution. But we need to get hydrochloric acid in order to do that, whereas where we venture off down the green route. I'm just going to show you the rest of the pink route, and then we'll go on to how to get the hydrochloric acid. We'll just set this up first. Once you've got your chromium crushed dust into your chromium hydrochloric solution, put that into an electrolyzer. That is going to turn it into chromium tiny dust with hydrogen and chlorine left over. And then pack up the chromium tiny dust. Make sure you don't get your white lists and black wrong. And then you pack that up into 9, and of course it goes into your mix. Just to go over again, centrifuge redstone dust into ruby dust. Push it into another centrifuge where you're centrifuging the ruby dust, chromium crushed dust. Then put the chromium crushed dust into a chemical reactor with hydrochloric acid, which makes chromium hydrochloric solution. Electrolyze it, and you'll get your tiny dusts, pack it in. Lastly, how do we get the hydrochloric acid? Well, we then basically just need salt and water. In an electric macerator, I want you to put salt ore, running out because I'm doing this in creative. So macerate up salt ore into crushed salt dust, and then put that crushed salt dust into another macerator to make salt dust. Put that into an electrolyzer, and you'll get a ton of sodium dust, which you can discard for now, and you'll get chlorine. You then need to get water and electrolyze it, take out the hydrogen, and put it into a chemical reactor with the chlorine. Chlorine is what you got from electrolyzing your salt. Chlorine goes straight up into a chemical reactor with the hydrogen that you've electrolyzed from your water. It says empty, that's because it's the oxygen left. And you need to get rid of this oxygen, dump it into a bin somewhere, like a void tank or whatever. And then take the hydrogen into your chemical reactor. Your chlorine and hydrogen will make hydrochloric acid. Do lock these slots because, like, look, see, filled up now. We actually would like to lock that being empty. When it's empty, you could just bucket it out or whatever. Hydrogen and chlorine make hydrochloric acid. Reactor here with your chromium crushed. Once again, salt ore, crushed dust into dust. Size the salt into chlorine. Put that into a reactor with hydrogen. You may already have hydrogen from earlier things you've made if you've been watching my tutorials. And water is. So, go over it again. Make the manganese and iron. You set them up in this order: centrifuge, chemical reactor, electrolyzer, electric packer, electric mixer. Chromium, it's going to be centrifuge, reactor, hydrochloric acid needs to come in, electrolyzer, and electric packer. The hydrochloric acid, you're going to need macerator, electrolyzer, a chemical reactor. What I'm now going to show you, this is the first time I've ever done this, so I'm very proud of this, is my flowchart made specifically. So this is something I've just tried to make. I think I might try and make it like available to Patreons, I'm not sure, but you can watch it here obviously. This, you can pause the video on, but this is basically the same color coding. You've got here your end game. This is the end game here. The electric mixer, all dusts. You then put the stainless steel dust into an EBF, and then the hot stainless steel into a vacuum. So here you've got your centrifuge. The name of the machine is at the top. So iron ore, manganese crushed dust, and iron dust. Iron dust goes straight into here. chemical reactor, manganese, crushed dust, etc. Sulfuric acid, I put a byproduct when making light heavy fuel diesel tutorial. So this is that basically visualized. And this is the pink chromium line here visualized. And then the hydrochloric acid where that comes in visualized. So just pause it on there if you want to see that. Hopefully that helps you. Please do comment down below if it did, because it was quite a lot of work. I'd love to know if you need more of these. So lastly, once you've got all of that nice stainless steel dust, it then goes into the electric blast furnace, which heats up the stainless steel dust into stainless steel hot ingots. And you just put the output hatch into an input hatch for here, and then you're going to get stainless steel ingots. Wow, this is getting difficult. This mod is getting interesting. This is the mid game. Next up is no idea what comes as I'm filming this. Hopefully this is still easy to understand. Modern industrialization is really cool in the fact that it makes things really, really complex, like this setup behind me, but then after that gives you a nice breath of fresh air with something that's really going to help you once you achieve that difficult bit. So this is the Distillation Tower. As you can see, very, very big, very, very long. So this is the setup here for stainless steel, which is super duper complex. But once you've made your stainless steel, the Distillation Tower is really quite simple and it's going to make your life a hell of a lot easier. So the few things you're going to want to make, first of all, are going to be the Distillation Tower unit itself. You could put it on the ground, and then you're going to need some stainless steel casings and some stainless steel pipe machine casings. And these are pretty much the same as all the other pipe machine casings, etc. you've made. You just need a load of stainless steel to make them. So if we go all the way back to the beginning of time, you have been making diesel for your medium voltage diesel generator, and maybe at this point high voltage diesel. You can make the high voltage diesel one round about the same time after you get stainless steel. So you may or may not remember that you put your crude oil that you're getting in your oil drilling rig into two distilleries, and you're going to get crude oil into sulfuric light fuel and heavy fuel, which is obviously a really annoying process because you're having to use individual machines. Now that we have the Distillation Tower, you could do it all in one. Let me show you this as an example, and I'm going to show you everything else you need to know. It's very, very simple. You basically make a donut shape like this, and then the bottom doesn't... Okay, let me rephrase this. The Distillation Tower can be different heights, and the bottom layer is not included. So, for example, if we look at the Distillation Tower uses, we can see that with crude oil, we can make sulfuric light fuel, sulfuric heavy fuel, and sulfuric naphtha, which is 3, okay? So we need to make a height of 3. 1, 2, 3. And hence, the bottom layer is not included because that's kind of like the controller layer. So you literally just make it like that. The bottom layer is, the bottom layer is plating. So put a plating on the bottom, and then your actual layers are going to be the pipe machine casing. So 1, 2, 3. That is now a 3-height distillation tower. If I go into the tower, you can see it says active. You need to click select multi-block shape and go to height 1, 2, 3. If I go to 4, it says shape invalid. What you can do is keep going up all the way to 9, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and make it, so like I've made this one 9 tall. If I go in here and select the shape as 9, it's active, but I could also put it down to 3, and it will ignore the ones above it. So if you do or can make the materials, I would advise that you just make it all the way up to 9, and then just make it the height that you need for whatever you're doing. So let's leave it as 3 for now. So what are we going to need in here? Well, we're going to need a fluid input for our crude oil. In this example, at least, we're going to need an energy input. You can basically make any energy input you like. So at this point, we have the LV, MV, or HV. Whichever energy input you put in here is the energy input that it can take. So obviously if you're using MV, use gold cables. If you're using LV, like I am here, then use copper cables. One thing to note is if we look at, again, uses, you can see here we only need 36 EU per tick, so a low voltage input for things like crude oil to make these fuels. Whereas if you want to do the higher fuels, like steam cracks naphtha into methane, blah, 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 then medium voltage would be appropriate. So it's entirely up to you there. So I'm going to use an LV input hatch. I'm going to use a steel fluid input hatch. Again, doesn't matter which fluid input hatches you use. And then you're going to need some output hatches, and just make sure that you have enough for the height that you're going for. So obviously on a free height, we only need 1, 2, 3 output hatches. We're going to, of course, need an LV power input, and we're going to need a fluid input. Then hook up your power. So I'm going to hook up my creative one and just add a copper cable. That's all I need for the LV for crude oil. And then I'm going to put in my creative tank of crude oil. Obviously, you would hook it up to your oil drilling rig or wherever you're having your oil stored, and put in a fluid pipe, which this is all pretty self-explanatory at this point. If you get into the distillation tower, then you know how to use a pipe. So once that goes in, we can go in here and you can see it's active and it is creating the progress. And there we go. We can now look into our outputs, and you can see we've got the sulfuric naphtha, heavy fuel, and light fuel all being made in the output hatches. If you are using a 9 high one, obviously remember just to put it down into height 3, and it will just use the 3 height ones. And that is how you use the distillation tower. The other things it can make then, because honestly I've forgotten myself when I want to look. We could put crude oil in here and get these 3. We could put shale oil in and get helium, sulfuric crude oil, and sulfuric naphtha. We can put steam cracked heavy fuel to get light fuel, methane, butadiene, and benzene. Steam cracked light fuel, again, getting these, or steam cracked naphtha to get methane, acetane, ethylene, propene, butadiene, benzene, toluene, and ethyl benzene. Cool, blimey. I hope YouTube isn't tracking what I'm saying, otherwise I'm going to have the FBI knocking at my door with all these. Everybody wonder what the hell I'm making. But there you go. That is how we use the distillation tower. Before we move on, what I actually wanted to show you was the possibilities of what you can now do with your distillation tower. So I've spent some time upgrading the 2 that I already had available to me for high voltage diesel, for your high voltage diesel generator. And what I have made here is boosted diesel. I think at this point, it's actually getting a lot easier. Personally, when I was setting up the stainless steel here, I was like, wow, this is really getting quite complex, kind of like how going from 3 times to 5 times ore processing in Mechanism is, if you've played that mod. But now that I've set up this setup, I'm really just starting to get used to the machines we're using, and it really is just like going from one step to one step to one step and working your way back, and it's actually getting quite easy, even though it's technically getting more complex. It's really starting to get to the point now where I'm using all these different fuels, etc., but we've already got half of them, so you're not really making new stuff much, you're just actually repurposing old stuff, including things like oxygen, where we were just wasting it before. We're now actually finding a use case for it, and I quite like that. So let's get into it. We have the small distillation tower here, which was making our light fuel and heavy fuel, which we were putting through the chemical reactors with hydrogen, which we're getting from water. And then we were making it into light fuel, heavy fuel, into diesel, right? I want to go one step further. If we take that diesel, which if we look at it, you can see that fuels EU per millibucket 400, whereas we can double it without really much extra work, boosted diesel, and that is 800. So it's double the amount of EU per millibucket for boosted diesel. All we need to do is pump that diesel into another mixer with diethyl ether. And there you go, some diethyl ether and diesel makes boosted diesel. Just to make it really obvious, I'll just plop some in there so you can see it. So you're just mixing one other fuel to make boosted diesel. And then I'm pumping that boosted diesel into my high voltage diesel generator. So how do we then make diethyl ether? Well, I was looking into it, and you actually just need ethanol and acrylic acid, and we can get this from the stuff we've already made. So what are we going to do? First up, remember that when we're making our light fuel and heavy fuel, we were also making sulfuric naphtha. So again, it's a wasted fuel at the moment that we weren't using. Now we're going to use it. So I want you to extract the sulfuric naphtha. And remember, you don't have to do this. I just kind of wanted to include this to show you the possibilities of what you can actually do now that you've got the distillation tower. And now that you're used to using these machines. Yes, it's a bit of like spaghetti, but it's actually quite straightforward now. So you take out the sulfuric naphtha, and I will have another flowchart for this, and you pump that into a chemical reactor. So the sulfuric naphtha with hydrogen, which again, you're getting already from an electrolyzer from water. So, we're already making hydrogen elsewhere. We were already making the sulfuric naphtha either way. So we're not really doing any extra work at the moment. And when you put those two together, you're basically separating the sulfuric naphtha and hydrogen into just naphtha. So you get the sulfuric acid back as well. So again, more sulfuric acid that you can use elsewhere, and you'll get naphtha. What we then do is pump it into another chemical reactor with steam. So the naphtha and steam makes steam cracked naphtha. I do actually recommend that you do steam crack your naphtha because when we put it in the distillation tower, you're going to get so many fuels that we can use for so many different things, and it's going to be amazing. All you have to do is literally just add naphtha and steam in a chemical reactor, and that's steam cracked naphtha. Pump in the steam cracked naphtha into an 8-tall distillation tower. As you can see here, there's a hell of a lot going on in here. And you are going to get a lot of things. So if I just put in steam cracked naphtha in the distillation tower, you're going to get methane, acetylene, ethylene, propene, butadiene, benzene, toluene, and ethyl benzene. So a lot of these we can use later for who knows what later in this tutorial. But at the moment, we want to take out the ethylene and the propene. So just look at what fluid outputs they come out of. We've got ethylene coming out of here and propene coming out of here. Let's start off with the ethylene. So pump that out. Oops. And that's going to come straight down into a chemical reactor. And then pump out the propene into another chemical reactor. Remember that when you're making your hydrogen over here from water, so you could be making it over here or back in, previously in the tutorial, it's from electrolyzing water, and oxygen has always been like, we haven't really done anything with it. Well, now we will. So with that oxygen, take it out and put it into the chemical reactor with your propene. So the propene and oxygen makes acrylic acid. Pump out the acrylic acid into a chemical reactor, and then let's go back to the ethylene. The ethylene that comes out of the distillation tower goes into a chemical reactor with sulfuric acid. And remember, you've just been making sulfuric acid when separating your naphtha with hydrogen. So again, you have actually already got sulfuric acid. Rather than pumping it out, I've just said I've got it because we've used it earlier, so you may already have it in storage. Sulfuric acid, water, and ethylene makes ethanol. Pump your ethanol and your acrylic acid together in a chemical reactor, and that will get you your diethyl ether. Diethyl ether and diesel makes boosted diesel. Sounds complex, but when you actually look at it, we're not really doing much extra work. We already had the oxygen that we've been using oxygen a lot so far in this tutorial. Well, wasted oxygen, sulfuric acid, and hydrogen we've been making a lot of already. We've already got the distillation tower built. So, and the naphtha. We've already got the sulfuric naphtha. We were making it as a byproduct with making light and heavy fuel. The steam we've already made earlier on in the game. So to make boosted diesel, we're not actually making any new fuels here. Apart from the distillation tower here, but we're actually just using fuels and byproducts that we already had and were wasting, and yet now we are doubling our EU per tick on the fuel we are using. Again, you don't have to do this, of course, but I'm just starting to get really comfortable now with the machines, and I think you probably will be too. So the way I done this to look at how to make boosted diesel is I went, okay, boosted diesel. Okay, have I got biodiesel? No. Diethyl ether? No. Have I got diesel? Yes. Have I got diethyl ether? No. Okay, so I've only got to make one thing. How do I make it? It needs acrylic acid and ethanol. Okay, and then I choose one. So, okay, I'm going to go down the ethanol line. Okay, I need ethylene and water and sulfuric acid. Well, I've got these two. How do I make ethylene? Well, I look through all the options and I think, oh, Distillation Tower. Well, I've just made this, so I know I can use it. And I need steam cracked naphtha. And I thought, oh, well, I get all these byproducts. Steam cracked naphtha, well, it's just naphtha and steam. I know I've got steam and I know I've got naphtha. Meaning, okay, cool, I can make ethylene, water and sulfuric acid. I can make the ethanol. So I know that for the two things I need here, I can do 1 out of 2. Let's go on to the other one, acrylic acid. Can I make this? Well, it needs propene and oxygen. I know I've got oxygen from my electrolyzer when making hydrogen, so I'm not using my oxygen yet, so that's good. Propene. Oh, I get it from steam cracked naphtha. Cool. Well, I'm already looking to make that from the other one. So I then know that I can make diethyl ether. And I know that I have diesel. And I just work it back. Now, what I find easier with these long processing lines is that rather than starting from the start, I start from the end. So what I do to make it easier on my brain is I go, I know I've got my diesel here. Okay, I'm going to put the electric mixer down with diesel and diethyl ether. And then I work my way back and go, okay, then what do I need? What machine do I need? Okay, yeah, it's another chemical reactor. I'll place that down and I'll work it back one step. And then I'll just go up like this route or that route. And I work my way back step by step until I basically built it all. And then I just hook up all the pipes from, machine to machine, and voila, you have done it. And when you work it out step by step backwards like that, I personally find it a lot easier. Now, I did promise you another flowchart. So here it is. I might need to zoom out quite a lot on this. Okay, not too bad. So here you go. You can pause on this if you want, guys. I have diesel, I know we've already made. Electric mixer, diesel and diethyl ether. And then I've got the diethyl ether route coming up here. And what I've done is I've actually included screenshots now. I'm getting better at this already. Ethylene, water and sulfuric acid, etc. Sulfuric acid and water you should already have. Steam cracking the naphtha. And there's naphtha. And when you look at it like this, you realise this actually isn't that complicated at all. So there's probably a lot of other fuels and things we're going to be making forwards from this point in the tutorial, and I just wanted to kind of show you how easy it is to really actually work this stuff back, as this mod is getting quite complex at this point. We're getting quite close now to actually making huge amounts of power at 16,000 EU per tick. But there's a few things we need to do to prepare to get to that point. I'm just going to show you in the guidebook. We're at the mid-game still. We're going to be making high pressure, so looking at pressurizing steam, titanium and platinum. And we're also going to be looking at a large diesel generator. Once we've got these things, including processing units and highly advanced machine hulls, that's basically going to take us to the end of the mid-game. Well, we'll still have the nuclear reactor, but we're going to be kind of ready to get onto that, which is basically the finale of the mid-game before we go on to the end game, which has some really crazy stuff. So, we now need to look at upgrading our EBF. When you look at the EBF, and we press U on it, it's the electric blast furnace, you can see here that it says EBF cupronickel or EBF Kanthal tier. So the cupronickel one can only do up to 32 EU per tick recipes, so like aluminum, whereas the Kanthal tier can do up to 128 EU per tick recipes. And that's going to be things like uranium that we're going to need for our nuclear reactor. It's going to be titanium that we're going to be making shortly, annealed copper hot ingots, and the other one I mentioned, platinum. So you must upgrade to Kanthal at this point. To do this, it's pretty simple. We're still just going to put our electric blast furnace in. And you can, of course, just upgrade the ones that you've already got. And if you see here, it doesn't seem like we really need much, right? So we can use our heat-proof machine casings all on the floor, just like before, just like normal. But then instead we're actually going to use Kanthal coils. I'm going to show you how to make these Kanthal coils, don't worry. Now, what you may see is that once you've built it, basically just taking out the cupronickel for Kanthal, is that you click on it and it says shape invalid. Click on the select multi-block shape and just click that to Kanthal, and it will then say active. So this is the new Kanthal EBF that you've made, and we can make much more complex recipes like I showed you in here. So the main two next ingredients you need to actually get is platinum and titanium. I'm not going to show you the full setup for these. I think we've gone through enough recipes at this point that you should know how to kind of put these production lines together. But how do we make it? So just like before with stainless steel, we are going to have to use a vacuum freezer. And we're going to have to do that for a lot of the ingots that we're making at this stage in the game. So let's work it from the start. Platinum ore. You can actually mine this up. However, you must make sure in your electric quarry you're using a stainless steel drill. If you're not sure about getting certain ores, basically if we look at the electric quarry, you can see there is different drill heads that you can use that will get you different ores. A stainless steel one will get you titanium, tungsten, monzonite, and platinum. Specifically right now, we're looking to get platinum and titanium. What I would do is just make 4 different quarries. One with a gold drill, one with a stainless steel drill, one with a steel drill, and one with a titanium drill once you've made it, which is how you're going to get uranium and iridium. Wow. So, you've gotten your platinum ore. We are then going to macerate it into raw platinum. After that, we're going to put that raw platinum into a chemical reactor with sulfuric acid. You've got tons of sulfuric acid lying around. We've been using it the whole way through this tutorial. In the chemical reactor, that will get you platinum sulfuric acid. What you then do with that platinum sulfuric acid is just run it through a centrifuge. There's a small chance of getting some iridium tiny dust, but you're going to get purified platinum sulfuric solution. After that, you could just electrolyze it, where you get the sulfuric acid back, and you get platinum tiny dust. And then just pack that, even in your crafting table, or more likely in your packer, pack that tiny dust into platinum dust, and you put the dust in the EBF, make sure it's Kanthal tier that I've just showed you about upgrading, and you get the platinum hot ingot. Then that goes in the vacuum freezer. So again, mine it up, put it into a chemical reactor of sulfuric acid, and I'm just pressing U on JEI just to get to the next step. That gets you your platinum sulfuric solution. Then put it through a centrifuge where you get the purified version, electrolyze it into tiny dusts, and then pack it into dust, EBF it, and cool it down in the vacuum freezer. That's how you get platinum. Titanium is quite similar in the fact that we get raw titanium by macerating titanium ore. Again, it's the stainless steel drill. After that, you want to put your raw titanium with manganese sulfuric solution straight into the EBF, and you're going to get titanium hot ingots. And if you're thinking, cool, blimey, manganese sulfuric solution, how the hell do I get that? Well, you should already have it, because if you remember from earlier in this tutorial, we were actually getting manganese crushed dust from raw iron when we're making stainless steel. If you've forgotten, if I come over here to my stainless steel setup, it was this one. So in here we have the raw iron being centrifuged, going into a chemical reactor. When you centrifuge raw iron, you get the manganese crushed dust. With sulfuric acid, you get manganese sulfuric solution. So it's actually quite simple, and you were doing it to make stainless steel. So you do or should have manganese sulfuric solution already to use with your titanium in your Kanthal tier EBF, where you then get the titanium hot ingots. Surprise, surprise, we then vacuum freeze the hot ingots into titanium. And there you go, you have now made platinum and titanium. Once you've made your titanium and platinum, the next thing we really need to start making are highly advanced machine hulls. And this is where things get really quite complex. However, we're going to break it down step by step, because actually you pretty much have everything you need now to make these items. These are used in EV to SV transformers, EV energy input hatches, highly advanced item input hatches, highly advanced fluid ones, nuclear reactors, you're going to need them for, large diesel generators, EV storage, quantum machine casings, and things like that, which is where we're getting really complex. And specifically, we're going to be looking at processing units, large diesel generators, and high pressure steam. These are the next few things that we're looking at, but we do need to make these highly advanced machine hulls. To make them, you're going to need annealed copper cable, cadmium batteries, highly advanced machine casing, which is just a turbo machine hull with some chromium and titanium, which you should have already been able to make. Chromium, remember, is the one where if we work it back from the nuggets in the centrifuge, well, you can get it from lava for the nuggets in a centrifuge, but the way I was actually meaning, was in a vacuum freezer. Chromium dust, it's going to go back to redstone. If we go to macerator, no, chromium tiny dust. Here we go. The ruby dust, remember, that you're centrifuging into chromium crushed dust, is then going to be going with your hydrochloric acid into chromium hydrochloric solution for hydrogen and chlorine, etc. When you were making, I think it was steel earlier. I'm filming this like the next day. I'm trying to remember. Down here. There we go. There's your chromium hydrochloric solution, etc., and your chlorine, etc. So you are already making this at this point. And that just leaves the processing unit. And this is probably the most advanced thing we've made so far. I haven't put a setup of it like I have for everything else, because at this point, you're just using all of the same machines that I've been showing you for the entirety of this tutorial. Now, we just need to be putting it together to make the things that you need to make and the production lines that you need to do. So, processing units. Now, the digital circuits and the arithmetic logic units shouldn't be too difficult to make. You've got AND gates, NOT gates, OR gates, and diamond plates, etc. And for the digital circuits, you've got electronic circuits, which need electronic circuits, etc. Some AND gates, a digital circuit board. The only thing you might not have yet is the polyethylene to make these digital circuit boards. So polyethylene, if we look at it, in a chemical reactor, you could just put tiny lead dust in with ethylene. And ethylene you will be getting from your steam-cracked naphtha earlier. So that's one of the gases you're getting from there. That takes care of the digital circuits. The three that we're going to find quite complex is the random access memory, the processing unit boards, and the memory management units. So let's take it from the top and go with the memory management units. Remember, you can always just work back. We're going to need some platinum fine wire, which is of course in a wire mill with some platinum wire, and we now know how to make platinum. We're also going to need an emerald plate, very simple. Where it gets a little bit more complex is silicon wafer. If we look at that, you need to put in an electric cutting machine, some lubricant, easy peasy, but also a monocrystalline silicon. So monocrystalline silicon will need iridium tiny dust, silicon dust, easy, and argon. Iridium you can actually get in your quarry. It's not as rare as it is in other mods, so you can actually mine this. Argon, you're going to need to get in a centrifuge from liquid air. Liquid air will give you oxygen, nitrogen, and argon. Liquid air can simply be made in a vacuum freezer with an air intake. An air intake makes liquid air in your vacuum freezer. And an air intake is actually just aluminum and stainless steel plates. Let's now work it forward. So air intakes make it quite easily. You put into a vacuum freezer to get liquid air. The liquid air goes into a centrifuge. And don't forget, guys, this is all chaptered in the video, so you can watch this a few times if you need to. The liquid air goes into a centrifuge and you get your oxygen, argon, and nitrogen. So argon is actually really simple to get. Argon, in your new Kanthal EBF with silicon dust and iridium tiny dust, makes your monocrystalline silicon. So that's actually quite straightforward and simple. For iridium tiny dust as well, when you're putting in platinum sulfuric solution, you have got a 5% chance to get iridium tiny dust. But we also do have like deep slate, iridium ore, etc. You should be able to get this in your quarry. So once you've got your monocrystalline silicon, we can put this into the electric cutting machine, and you do get 32 silicon wafers here. So to start with, you don't have to make a billion of these. And then with the platinum fine wire, etc., you've got the memory management unit. So actually, 1 out of 3 items down, it wasn't that difficult. Second item, random access memory. It needs a silicon wafer, which we've just looked at making. It needs the argon, which we've already just looked at making as well. It's going to need antimony dust, aluminum dust, easy peasy, and then styrene butadiene rubber. To get this one in a chemical reactor, we need to put styrene butadiene with lead tiny dust or chromium. Chromium gets you double the amount or over double the amount, so there is that to take into consideration which one you're using. And with the styrene butadiene, well, that is just gotten by mixing in a chemical reactor butadiene and styrene. And if you're thinking, oh my goodness, where do I get these two? Well, actually, that's really, really easy. You'll notice when, from our steam cracked naphtha, we are actually getting butadiene. And what was the other one? And styrene is gotten from ethyl benzene. So one of them, the butadiene, we get straight out of our steam cracked naphtha. And then the other one, styrene, we actually get from steam, which we've already got, iron dust, we've obviously already got, and ethyl benzene. And the ethyl benzene is as well from the steam cracked naphtha. So we get the butadiene straight away, and then the ethyl benzene, we just mix with steam and iron dust to get styrene. And then once you've got your styrene and butadiene, it then goes to styrene butadiene, which we then put with chromium or tiny lead dust to get styrene butadiene rubber, which we then mix with the other things we've already got to make our random access memory. It's worth noting, once you do now have styrene butadiene rubber, you can just make 64 rubber sheets from this in your vacuum freezer, meaning you now have an easier recipe for that as well. For the last part, it's the processing unit board. This is going to need some annealed copper, some cadmium batteries, digital circuit boards, and platinum plates, which we can now have everything of. The last thing you're going to need in the assembler is polyvinyl chloride. Again, with lead tiny dust or chromium, we use vinyl chloride and you get 300 or 700, same again. Vinyl chloride is acetylene and hydrochloric acid. So the acetylene, again, we're getting from our steam cracked naphtha. So one of the other gases we already have. The hydrochloric acid you should already have from earlier. Hydrogen and chlorine. This is at the chromium hydrochloric solution part, remember? And you're going to get chlorine either from salt in an electrolyzer or at this stage here. So I think the way I showed you earlier was from salt, where you're then getting your chlorine. And then you just mix that hydrochloric acid, hydrogen and chlorine equals hydrochloric. You just mix that with the acetylene that you're getting from your steam cracked naphtha, and you get vinyl chloride. That then means we can make the processing unit boards. So we can now make the memory management unit, the random access memory, and the processing unit boards, meaning we can now make processing units. And these are really, really one of the most advanced things you are going to be making in this mod. I hope you don't mind that I didn't pull it out for you in like a visual kind of setup. I think at this point in the mod, and I'm hoping here that I'm right, that you guys, understand how to make these processing lines, etc., and don't need to see it one by one. If I'm showing you the steps to do it, I'm hoping that should be enough now because you've done it so many times. But that is how we're again going to make our highly advanced machine hulls. After that really difficult task, we're now going to make things really easy and generate an intense amount of power. So there's a reason why I was making you get boosted diesel earlier, and that is because we can now make a large diesel generator. These generate, checks my notes, 16,384 EU per tick, which is extreme voltage. To make these, however, you are going to need some titanium, some processing units, and some highly advanced machine hulls, like I've just been showing you. You could make a few of them, or you could just make one, obviously, to start with. So you've got your processing unit, your highly advanced machine hull, some titanium gears, some large advanced pumps, which needs more titanium, more processing units, and then same with the large advanced motors. It's going to need more titanium and some advanced motors, which actually are quite easy to make. But again, another processing unit in those too. And you will need an HV diesel generator on its own. Now, you could start off with just some HV diesel generators. They still make, I think, 1,024 EU per tick. But I would really recommend you going for the large diesel ones if you can now. So they're quite easy to make, actually, apart from all the ingredients I've just told you about that are not so easy. What we're going to do is we're going to place some titanium pipe machine casing, and you're going to need some solid titanium machine casing. On top, I'm putting my large diesel generator. It sets at the second height. And as you can see here, the front is going to be pipe machine casing. So we're going to surround it with pipe machine casing like that. Then the two in the middle are also going to be, so here and here. The rest of it is just solid titanium. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then just surround all of that with the solid titanium like this. And you now have a large diesel generator. You're only going to need 2 inputs and outputs. One is going to be your fluid input hatch, obviously for your diesel. And then your output is going to be the energy output hatch. If we look at the fluid input hatch, and you can use any of these for this, by the way, remember, you don't have to use the crazy ones. I'm actually just going to use an advanced fluid hatch for now. And you can see you can put it on the sides here. So I'm going to put one here, attach the fluid pipe. Obviously, you'd put it to your boosted diesel or your diesel, whichever one you are making. I'm going to go with boosted. Make sure you put that to obviously extract. That goes in to the fluid hatch. And then at the back, we need to put an EV energy output hatch, which is going to need another highly advanced machine hull. That goes in the back here. I think it can only go in the back. And then what you're going to need, I don't think I actually explained it before, but at this point with the cabling, we are going to be using annealed copper or platinum. Annealed copper can transfer 65,000, platinum can do the same, and that's at 65k. The only one after that is superconductor cables. If you've got enough platinum, go with platinum. Otherwise, annealed copper is made. It's pretty much in the EBF. Annealed copper in the EBF, Kanthal tier. Oh no, that's sorry. It's going to be annealed copper hot ingots. There we go. In the Kanthal tier EBF, you could just put copper dust with oxygen to get your annealed copper hot ingots, which obviously then you could just vacuum freeze. So they're quite easy to make, those annealed copper. I do like how this mod makes you do really difficult stuff, but then also a lot easier stuff, thank goodness. So annealed copper coming out of there. I'm going to place down an EV storage unit, which can store 49 million. Put that into the top here, and you can see just how quickly we are making energy with our large, is it called large diesel generator? Large diesel generator, yes. You can see we're making tons and tons of energy. So that is maybe how you're going to be making your energy from this point on. If, however, using the big old diesel generators is too boring and easy for you, there's always this option. Oh, if I can say it, this option. So, what the hell is going on here? Well, this is also going to make the exact same amount of energy as the large diesel generator. This is a large steam turbine. So this produces 16,000 or up to 16,000 EU per tick and can use high pressure steam or steam in the turbine. It's a large version of the turbine. We've got a few things here that we're going to be using. And then we've got this optional extra, which is quite confusing, in my opinion. So number one, the pressurizer. What does this do? Well, it pressurizes things. What we're going to do is build the pressurizer. And again, I'm going to assume that you, by this point, you know how to make these multi-blocks. Like this, etc. I'm not going to have to probably go through these at this point, I don't think. So the pressurizer, what we're doing is we are pumping in water in a highly advanced fluid input hatch. You could probably use a lesser one. We're pumping in water and we're getting out high pressure water. So you guessed it, the pressurizer is pressurizing things. It can pressurize a few things. High pressure heavy water into heavy water, high pressure heavy water steam, and this is going to get confusing already. Your air intakes that you were making previously, you can put these into the pressurizer to get liquid air. That is another option of doing that, by the way. But what we're doing is putting water in, and we're getting out from a fluid output hatch, high pressure water. So water into high pressure water. It will need powering. Then what I'm doing from the pressurizer is I'm putting the high pressure water into a high pressure advanced large steam boiler. Oh my goodness, what a mouthful that is. Again, it's a big multi-block, and this is basically a high pressured version of your advanced large steam boiler. So what we're doing in here is we're feeding it with fuel. I'm using boosted diesel, so an input fluid hatch with boosted diesel and an input hatch of your heavy water, your high pressure water, should I say, goes in, and what it's doing is it's turning it into high pressure steam, which is actually quite simple. Again, this one doesn't need energy because you're fueling it with boosted diesel or whatever fuels you'd like to use. So high pressure water and boosted diesel going into fluid input hatches in your high pressure advanced steam boiler. Then with that high pressure steam, we can pump it straight into our large steam turbine, and it will just start whizzing around and making power. It looks like this, fairly simple to build. The only thing is you will not get any of the steam back. You will not get any water back from this. So it's completely and utterly gone. And that is where the heat exchanger comes into it. So this is where it got a bit confusing for me. You can need some frost-proof machine casing, some heat-proof machine casing, because it's literally heat exchanging. I've put 2 advanced fluid input hatches in and 2 advanced fluid output hatches. So I'm putting in my high-pressure steam that you're making, and I'm also just putting in water. What we're then getting is a little bit of high-pressure water, but a lot of steam. This then means you're making a closed loop. So you can output the high-pressure water back into your high-pressure advanced large steam boiler. So you'd have the... Yep, high-pressure water, that's what I want. So you'd have the high-pressure water basically coming into here. The high-pressure water coming out of your heat exchanger, and then you've just got the steam. Now for the steam, what you then do is rather than putting high-pressure steam into your steam turbine, you could just put the steam that you get from here straight into your steam turbine. And then you put in your water and your high-pressure steam, so your water coming from over here would go into here, and then your high-pressure steam would go into here. And it basically creates a feedback loop, which makes it more efficient. So it's up to you if you want to do it like that or not. It is quite a confusing way to do it. The way that they explain it in the guidebook is a large steam turbine will accept both regular steam, 1 millibucket equals 1 EU, and high pressure steam, 1 millibucket equals 8 EU, and will generate up to 16,000. However, it will not give you back regular nor high pressure water. Then it explains the pressurizer, etc., which I don't think I need to explain in here. And then you've got the heat exchanger. Remember that pressurizing water into high pressure water costs a lot of energy, but the turbine will not give it back. You can use a heat exchanger to recover the high pressure water for another cycle. Or you could just use a smaller high HV steam turbine as well, which only makes 512 EU per tick. So that is how you use the steam turbine and the pressurizer and the heat exchanger. Personally, because I'm already making boosted diesel, I'm just going to go the diesel generators. If you are looking at making nuclear reactors, this setup here may come in handy shortly. Okay guys, you've made it. This is where this mod gets really, really cool. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of materials, but this is where we get to the crazy stuff. So, you want to make an implosion compressor. Let's first have a look at it. The implosion compressor itself needs blast-proof alloy large plates, and that really is the main thing you need here. It's a lot of solid titanium machine casings on the bottom, 2 rows of blast-proof casing, and then more titanium. So blast-proof, basically you need a ton of blast-proof alloy plates. Blast-proof alloy plates are technically easy to make. You're going to make them basically in an electric compressor. using mixed blast-proof ingots. How do you make mixed blast-proof ingots? Well, it's in a packer with stainless steel, titanium, and tungsten. Tungsten is generally made in the implosion compressor, which is the thing we're trying to make. So to get started, you are going to need 2,304. Okay, that's 256 tungsten ingots, 2,304 nuggets. So basically, you have to make 256 tungsten ingots, and then you'll never have to worry about this tedious way of doing it again because you'll have the implosion compressor. So the way it works, if we look at tungsten, we can find it in, these Y levels, and then we can macerate it into raw tungsten. The raw tungsten can then be macerated into tungsten dust, but you cannot make the dust into ingots. You then have to make the dust in either an unpacker or your crafting table, ideally an unpacker, into tiny tungsten dust. That tiny tungsten dust then goes into a compressor into nuggets, and nuggets can be made into ingots. The ingots then get put into, golly gosh, I've gotten confused now. The ingots get put with your titanium and stainless steel in a packer to make the mixed blast-proof ingots. 2 mixed blast-proof ingots in the electric compressor make a blast-proof alloy plate. Once you have made it, you could just put some industrial TNT in there in the implosion compressor and get 3 of these. So that's how you make mixed blast-proof ingots. Once you've got on all of those, you can then obviously make your implosion compressor. So it's just an item on the bottom, surrounded with titanium, then blast-proof, and then titanium on the top. Now, let's see what this implosion compressor can make. This is where it gets a bit wild. An ultra-dense metal ball, which is iridium and lead and tungsten, and 64 nukes, which need tritium, deuterium, processing units, plutonium, nuclear alloy, etc. We can make a singularity, which is where we get to crazy land in quantum level. We can also use stainless steel nuggets and beryllium with industrial TNT to make beryllium ingots. The blast-proof alloy ingots, of course. Diamond dust with industrial TNT. Emeralds from emerald dust. Mixed iridium ingots into iridium plates. Nuclear alloy plates. Enchanted golden apples. And even never stars with the singularities. Wow. That is the implosion compressor. Once you've made that, we now want to move on to the nuclear reactor. So this is a really interesting piece of equipment, and it can be overly, incredibly, crazily complex, or you can actually use some templates, etc., and it can really be quite simple once you know how. So, how do we make it? Well, it's a multi-block, as you could see, made of a block called nuclear reactor. To make that, we're going to need some processing units, a highly advanced machine hull, some cadmium control rods, and nuclear alloy plates. The reason I'm telling you this is because we are going to need some materials that I don't believe you've used yet, but you should have, or have availability of. So in the implosion compressor, which obviously I've just shown you, you're going to be making nuclear mixed plates with industrial TNT. Nuclear mixed plates are blast-proof alloy plates. Cool, we've just seen those. Beryllium plates and cadmium plates. 2 things that I don't think I've covered in this tutorial, however, it isn't difficult to get your hands on. So beryllium, in the implosion compressor, you can make beryllium ingots with beryllium tiny dust. Beryllium dust makes tiny dust. Beryllium dust being made in an electrolyzer just from emerald dust. You get some beryllium, some silicon, some aluminum, and some oxygen. So the emerald dust, you could just macerate up emeralds. So basically you're macerating emeralds into beryllium dust, and then you just turn it into tiny dust, put it through the implosion compressor, and make it into a plate. It's pretty much the same with cadmium, where you make cadmium dust. Actually, you could just use it in a smelter. You actually just smelt cadmium dust into ingots, and you can centrifuge monazite dust to get neodymium, yttrium, and cadmium with some helium. Now, the helium we are going to be using later in the quantum tier. Monazite is, again, just from monazite ore. So that should be pretty easy to get as well. So actually making these nuclear mixed plates isn't too difficult. That obviously makes you a nuclear alloy large plates, which you're going to need a lot of, and therefore the nuclear reactor. So if I just build a new one, what you'll see is this is the small version. So it really is just these nuclear platings that you're having to make here. As you can see, it's not that difficult in terms of building the thing. Now, you can make it into small, medium, large, and extreme, however. I'm just going with a small one for this tutorial. Obviously, the bigger ones can do a lot more. Once you've built it, what you're then going to be able to do on top is put hatches. And specifically, it's going to be item and input hatches. So, if we look inside the reactor, can you see here that I've got 3, 6, and 9 blocks here? Well, if I delete this middle one, and now I go in, oh, the shape's invalid, of course it is. If I replace it with a casing like this, now you can see it's just the outline, but the middle one is not accessible. So, depending on if you put item hatches or fluid hatches, will depend on what you have available to you in your grid. Will it be a fluid slot like it is now because I put a fluid hatch, whereas if I put an item hatch in the middle here, the middle slot is now an item hatch. And obviously the bigger reactors, you can have a lot more slots, but we're just using a small one. When you look inside these fluid hatches, you see there's a temperature. We obviously we don't want it to overheat. And as an FYI, they will not cause radiation. They will not blow up your map. They will not overheat and explode. They won't do any of that stuff. It's just that if the temperature gets too high in here, the items you put in may just disintegrate because it's too hot for them. That's the only negative thing that can happen. Still negative, but not like other mods. So we have 1 input fluid and 2 output fluids, and that is in each hatch. You can actually put in different fluids. For example, on the left fluid hatch, I'm putting in high pressure water, and that is going to output high pressure steam and deuterium. Whereas on the right hand, well, somewhere else. In fact, let me show you in JEI. So if we look at tritium and how we make it, you can see it says neutron interaction. Heavy water equals tritium, whereas deuterium is in a neutron interaction, water into deuterium, or high pressure water into deuterium. So how do I make tritium again? I can't remember. That is going to be heavy water. So in this central fluid hatch, I could pump in heavy water, and that's going to get me tritium and heavy water steam, which you could then process back through your heat exchanger and put through your turbine, etc. So you can get both. You can actually put different things in different slots. It's going to obviously have different outputs, and as you can see now, the central one is heavy water and the rest are high pressure water, because that's what I've put into those slots. In the item hatches, that is where you would put your uranium. One thing we do need to be aware of course, is actually how to make uranium. So uranium quad fuel rods, for example. Let's just come out of here. I'm going to need some nuclear alloy plates, which we've obviously just looked at. And then uranium double fuel rods. Double are made from single ones. Single ones, basically you're using your helium and soldering alloy, which is made from tiny tin and lead to make soldering alloy. And then obviously you can make that in a steam blast furnace into soldering alloy. And the helium that you just got from your monazite as well. I said you'd be using that later. Well, here we are. And then uranium rods, which can be made in a cutting machine with uranium and lubricant. And uranium is actually pretty easy. You just put uranium dust, which you can just get from a macerator from raw uranium, in a Kanthal EBF. So it's actually quite simple-ish to make the uranium itself. And then once they're done, you get depleted uranium fuel rods, which you can actually put through a centrifuge to get uranium-238, uranium-235, and some plutonium, which you can then turn to plutonium nuggets and Le MOX tiny dust and He MOX tiny dust and all of this. And this is different stuff that you could put into your reactor. So we can make that into dusts and tiny dusts, etc. Nuggets, ingots, and then you end up basically making those into HE MOX rods and then HE MOX fuel rods, etc., for the nuclear reactor. And that's how you make your uranium. There is a website that is really, really, really useful. It's this one here, and it basically shows you all of the different plans. So if you want to make deuterium specifically, you can use these, and if you click the link, it will take you through to the plan. This is obviously this is an extreme size, whereas I'm showing you in game a small size. But the same thing, you use the same hatches as you could sort of see here. If we go down to small, this is the one that I have used because I thought, why bother trying to work this all out myself when there's perfectly good ones already available. So this is the one I'm using here, and as you can see, there's 9 slots. It's a small reactor, and you can see here what they're using, high pressure water, etc. And it shows you what you're going to get per minute if using these setups. So I'm going to link this in the description for you, as this will be really, really helpful when designing your nuclear reactors, or in this case, not designing them, just using these designs from these very clever people that have made these here. It is, of course, I may have already said it, going to output high pressure steam and different things, and the temperature you can see going up in there. It is a lot more that you can learn about these. If you really want to, you can really, really get into the technicalities of these. But in this tutorial, I feel like it's not something I'm really educated enough on to go over. This tutorial is more sort of showing you how they work and how to use them. But you can read through them here. It can produce fluids used for nuclear fusion, deuterium and tritium, so we will be needing those. And it can also produce plutonium, as I showed you, when you get those depleted fuel cells. As it says here, it cannot explode, emit radiation, or otherwise damage the map. All it can do is damage the items you put in if the temperature gets too high. And then it just shows you about them, and it explains a bit more in detail about how the neutrons and the heat exchange, etc., works. But it's very, very in-depth. I would really recommend just maybe trying it out in creative from some different size reactors, or just going with the templates from the website that I showed you, depending on what it is that you need to make. Congratulations, everyone. You have now reached the fusion age. Now, it's actually quite simple at this age. It's just insanely expensive to do this stuff. I was worried it would be super duper overly complex, but it's actually really not. If we look in the end game of the manual here, we have quantum tier. So we have singularities, which I've already shown you in the Implosion Compressor, 64 nukes, which you use with tritium and deuterium, and your plutonium ingots, which will make 2 nukes. I mean, you are going to need a hell of a lot. It's going to take a while. Some nuclear alloys and industrial TNT, and some processing units. Everything that you now should already be getting gives you singularities. Also with the ultra-dense metal balls that I showed you earlier. One thing we can actually do with the singularity is put it into an electrolyzer, which gives you UU matter. You put the UU matter, 500 millibuckets of it, with some quantum circuits, quantum upgrades, and a quantum machine hull into an assembler, and you get a replicator, where you can then feed in UU matter and replicate whatever the hell you like. There's also the quantum upgrade, which is a super crazy, powerful, massive overclock. And we can actually also use it in an electric packer with some netherite tools to make quantum boots, a quantum chest plate, quantum helmet, leggings, and a quantum sword as well. Apparently the sword instantly vaporizes everything. The chest plate makes you immune to fall damage and gives you creative flight. Each new piece of armor increases by 25% the likelihood of nullifying any damage taken, so you should be invincible with all of them. There's also the quantum barrel that can hold 2.147 million stacks of a single item, and the quantum tank, which is the same as a fluid. So to make these items, you will need a singularity. You're going to need a quantum machine hull. You're going to need some iridium, some large advanced motors, titanium barrels, and quantum circuits. Quantum circuits are going to need processing units, a few new things like qubits, quantum circuit boards, and cooling cells. So cooling cells is literally just fluid pipes, heat exchangers, tin plates, and cryofluid. Cryofluid being made in the vacuum freezer with argon and helium, 2 things that you will now have. The qubits is with cryofluid and tritium. Again, things you now have. You'll start to see now what I mean by when I said it's actually quite simple at this point. Superconductor cables, which again is some cooling cells and some polyvinyl chloride. Again, you have all this. That's the best ever cables. Iridium and helium-free. Helium-free, by the way, you get from your helium just in a centrifuge to make helium-free. And that's how you make quantum circuits. So not cheap, but the actual process of making them at this point, you have everything you already need, which is really, really nice. You just may have to wait a while to get it. And the same with quantum machine hulls. It's not anything particularly complex you need, just high rare quality ingredients that you now will be able to get. So those are the few things you can make. We then have fusion. With some fusion chambers, which again is just super expensive stuff that you've already can have access to. This here is the fusion reactor. It's just a big multi-block. Again, just follow the wrench. What you do with this is you have on either side, so it can be front, back, left or right, you can put in some input hatches for tritium and deuterium. And then basically the fusion will make hydrogen and helium plasma. So if we actually look at the oh god, what's it called now? Fusion. The fusion reactor, you can put in deuterium and deuterium to make helium plasma and tritium, helium-free, etc. You get some hydrogen as well. There's a few different options. I'm personally going with here in this tutorial, deuterium and tritium to make helium plasma and hydrogen. You simply pump out of your fluid output hatch the helium plasma into an input hatch on a plasma turbine, which is this simple machine here. Again, simple, but very expensive. It can turn helium plasma into EU at the rate of 100k EU per millibucket. The maximum production is about 1 million EU per tick. And that, everybody, is modern industrialization. If you're still watching at this point, then thank you very, very much. I hope you learned a lot. This mod has been the most challenging tutorial I have filmed to date. Comment down below if you want me to attempt Greg Tech New Horizons. I really would love to. It may be something I do in the future. But my God, we have done a lot in this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. If you have watched the entire thing, I'd be terribly surprised if many of you have. We started off really simple, making steam here. And, you know, bronze boilers and things like that, going up to steel, looking at coke ovens. Then we were looking at steam blast furnaces, and then, you know, big multi-blocks like electric quarries. Then we moved up on to steam boilers and tanks and electricity, going on to cupronickel electric blast furnaces, and more electric machines, going on to oil rigs, making diesel over here, and then boosted diesel, and all sorts of different resources here. Then going on to distilleries and even more crazy stuff with boosted diesel, Kanthal EBFs, large diesel generators, and also pressurizers, high pressure advanced large steam boilers, heat exchangers, implosion compressors, nuclear reactors, and finally, fusion. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you don't know my channel, please do take a second. I'm going to explain it to you. So as you can see here, I do lots of different mods. If you go to my homepage of my channel, you have a shelf for tech mods. You also have a shelf for magic mods. A lot of the mods that I do cover are actually by audience request, so please do comment down below if there are specific mods that you're looking for me to do tutorials on. I love it when you guys ask me to, because it means, one, I don't have to do as much research, and two, I know that the mods I'm doing, you know, you guys do want me to cover. Some don't have playlists because it's just, say, one video, because it's a very small mod, so you can use the search bar here as well. If you are looking for a specific mod, please subscribe. It really, really helps me. I do have a Patreon in the description as well if you wish to support the channel. And thanks for watching.